Welcome back to Simulation and Prototyping. Here's just the follow-up to the previous Unroll tutorial. In this one, I just want to show you specifically how to take these unrolled objects. We can manipulate this a little bit. I want to make sure that that's working. I want to show you how to bake these, and then as a way to kind of take them away. And maybe what we could have done is changed something, quick step with our merges, because what we don't actually want surfaces for these. What we want are curves. And so let me see if I can just extract. See if we can use a curve container to get that. And we can actually. So I'm going to insert a curve to here instead of just moving that. And what's nice about this, what's nice about this is that this will be exactly what we're going to use for our, as I would jokingly call it, rapid prototyping, which is going to be a lot faster than 3D printing this. Okay, so we have these. This looks good. We have these curves. That looks great. So a couple of things of note. Again, I mentioned this before. Not the vertical, but the line that we see on the cone is just a seam line within this. That seam line is how this is unrolling given that algorithm. And so what you should start to get a sense for is using that seam line, right? The seam line will be here. Here's the oculus. Here's the seam line. So as you work your way around, you can quickly determine, given that seam line, so go from oculus down the seam, and here's a small edge, and then it goes into the intersecting portions. So here's the edge, and then it's moving around that way. So what you're going to have to do is figure out whether to unroll this, or not unroll it, but once you trim it out or laser cut it out, which way do you fold it? Inside or outside? And so you'll have to determine that. And let's just check and make sure everything's working. We can manipulate our trim on the outside, and we'll see these things change. My guess is it's here. So watch what happens. We move that point. You can see that drift up. And so what I love about this is just the real-time association between the unrolled and the three-dimensional. And so you may have a constraint in terms of a sheet size. You may have something that you're trying to achieve. You can work between these two things at the same time. And so we can also manipulate, let's see, I'm curious why. So we hid some of our points from the beginning. I can hide all of them, and now we just have our rhino points that are here. And so if we want to manipulate something, this will be our upper point. We can look, given what's happening here, if we want to pull this out. Again, don't be so worried about that. It just has to do with the kind of fussiness of the lists. And so I can find it, and we can see it's kind of, I think there's a correspondence. So that one was fine. Let's leave that one alone. This one was fine. We'll leave that one alone. And now we have that. And so let's just increase the maximum size here. And we'll just slide that one further over. And actually, this isn't bad to do this now. If I slide these over a little bit, it'll be a little bit easier to show you how I printed them out. Okay, so play with the cones, get them into a configuration that you like, get some difference between them, and have a sense for which way you want to unroll them, get all of that to work. Then the next step, and let's see, I can show you a couple of images So on the screen now, you can see my very, very simple paper model and my previous iteration. It's not the one that we're just working on, but a different configuration, but built exactly the same way. And you can see the correspondence between the seam in the cone. And here's the seam in the cone, and here's the seam in the paper. You can see that here. But the way that I did this is I just printed out, just on 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, the individual curves, one per sheet. I kept them all the same scale. That's important. You can cut them out with a knife, which is going to be the easiest for many of you that don't have direct access to a laser cutter. If you have access to a laser cutter, this is a very easy thing to do, where you can see I just cut them out. Here, what that isn't, it's not a 21. If you look, it's upside down. It says in for inside. And so what I did is tried to figure out which way would I need to fold these. And then I just put really simple tabs of tape on that seam edge, so that when I rolled it back on itself and I got those two edges to match up, I could just press it together using that tape. And so that's a simple setup for that. And so the last thing that you need to know how to do, if you don't already know how to do it, is that I will go to the top view. And from the top view, I would use this print icon. And I'm going to set up a really simple sheet. And I want the top view. Let's see, I want all of those things like that. Let's set this. And it says define a print window. I can just define something like that. I'll click enter. And the one thing that I want to check now is just, I want it to be 8.5 by 11. I can actually set it to be landscape. And vector output, print color is fine. I can set it to be black and white. We could actually bake it, but it looks like it will print. So let me close this first, because now when we go to print, it will give us the dialog box. And what I like to do now is just say set, and let's look at it and just make sure that the largest item fits on the sheet. And if it does, then I can right click. That will be printed out. I can say print. I'll print it as a PDF. Then the trick is that we don't want to change the scale as we go on. And so I'll go back to print. And when it gives me the dialog box, I want to set the window. And I don't want to do anything, but I want to click move up here. So when I click move, it sets the size of the sheet, and I can just simply move the sheet around. I press enter, and now we can see that shape is on the sheet. I can press print, save it to PDF. I'm going to print close, but I can do it once more. Again, we'll do set. We don't want to change anything. We'll go to move, and we can just move this over. Right click, and now we have that shape. So really simply, what we're just doing is keeping the scale the same, capturing each one of those. If you have a big enough printer, say you have 11 by 17, you can print them all at once. That's fine. For me, it was just a really simple thing to do, to just tile these with an 8.5 by 11, and then cut them out with a knife, and then put them together. And so for this assignment, I'm asking you guys to build this grasshopper definition. I'm asking you to show me some different versions of this geometrically, but then I am also asking you to build one of these simple paper models to go through this process of unrolling it and then putting them back together. I think that's a really useful way to think about working between these things. So this should be pretty easy. Let me know if you have any problems, if you have any questions, and good luck. And I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. Thanks.